Shalom Alechem. The poskim discuss whether one is allowed to shave on Rosh Chodesh Iyar that falls on Shabbat, which means, like this year, that Rosh Chodesh Iyar falls on Shabbat, one would be able to shave on Friday, Lichvod Shabbat, velichvod Rosh Chodesh. Is that permitted? So let's see the sugya as the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Taf Tzadik Gimel, נוהגים שלא להסתפר עד למד ג' לעומר שאומרים שאז פסקו מלמות. The reason we don't shave this time is because the students of Rabbi Akiva died since they didn't respect one the other properly, and therefore the minhag is to refrain from taking haircuts from Pesach until Lamed Gimel, Lag BaOmer. Ashkenazim shave and take haircuts on Lag BaOmer, and Sepharadim wait until the next day, Lamed Daled BaOmer. Some other Ashkenazim have a minhag to start from Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and they can take haircuts until then, and continue until before the Chag of Shavuot. Each counts 33 days. Now, what happens on Rosh Chodesh? Is one permitted to shave on Rosh Chodesh, take haircuts on Rosh Chodesh? Says the Shulchan Aruch in the next סעיף, יש נוהגים להסתפר בראש חודש אייר וטעות הוא בידם. Some have a custom to take haircuts on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and the Shulchan Aruch writes it is a mistake. Now obviously, when we're dealing with this opinion, it's continuation of the first seif, or the second seif of the Shulchan Aruch, the previous seif, which deals with restraining from Pesach until Lamed Gimel, Lamed Daled, because according to the minhag of the Ashkenazim that starts from Rosh Chodesh Iyar, this seif doesn't even start, because that is when they start refraining from taking haircuts. Now, what happens if you have over here two joyful events, Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat? That's already another discussion. The Bach was the first one to bring this down, and he says that since there's two occasions here, two joyful occasions, it is permitted to take haircuts. כשחל ראש חודש בשבת שיש בו תוספת שמחה, שבת וראש חודש, מותרים הכל. And he writes that also other poskim went along with this psak. Also poskim Sepharadim, שירי כנסת הגדולה בהגאות בית יוסף או ד', which was one of the greatest poskim Sepharadim, and he writes this on the Bet Yosef, and he doesn't comment that the minhag or the halachot should not be like that. He just quotes the Bach that when there are two joyful events, it is permitted. Also, the Brit Chadash writes like that once you have two joyful events, it is permitted. The Radbaz, which was the greatest of the generations posek, he lived in Egypt, and he was the rabbi of the Arizal, also the rabbi of the Rav of the Arizal, Rabbi Betzalel Ashkenazi, the Shita Mekubetzet. He writes that it is permitted to take haircuts on Rosh Chodesh. He writes that he himself used to take haircuts on Rosh Chodesh. He discusses also Shabbatot before Shabbat for the honor of Shabbat. So there are over here way to find a leniency where if Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat. Indeed, we found a machloket in the poskim of whether it is permitted, machloket in the poskim of this generation. One of the greatest poskim in Israel, Rav Ofir Malka Shlita, he writes that since there are two leniencies together, it is permitted. Permitted lechatchila, everybody can shave without any hesitation, no great need, whenever it comes together, one is allowed to shave for the honor of Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. Rav Yitzchak Yosef, on the other hand, disagrees. He says that the Shulchan Aruch, when he writes that it's not permitted on Rosh Chodesh, he says that it means that even if Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat. Rav Ofir Malka disagrees. He says if that's the case, you should have wrote it openly. Shulchan Aruch should have said a bigger chidush. יש נוהגים להסתפר בראש חודש אייר וטעות הוא בידם. And even on Rosh Chodesh Iyar that falls on Shabbat, it's restricted, because that's more of a chidush. And the Shulchan Aruch didn't write that, indicating a diuk that it's mashma that it is permitted. However it is, even the Rav Yitzchak Yosef, in his Sefer, Yalkut Yosef, brings down that if it's much needed, one is very uncomfortable, he has a lot of tzar, he says that it's permitted. And he writes like this, יש אנשים שהדבר קשה להם מאוד להמתין כל כך לגילוח הזקן. Some people find it very hard not to shave. לכן נהגו לגלח הזקן בכל ערב שבת או בראש חודש אייר. Therefore, they have a leniency to shave every ערב שבת and on ראש חודש אייר, וסמכו על הגאון הרדב"ז שהתיר בזה. And over here he says another point which we'll address soon, that the whole discussion was always about taking haircuts, but not about shaving. Haircuts was restricted. Haircut was the minhag, not shaving, because people didn't shave anyway, so that didn't come into the discussion. He says over here, נכון להחזיק במנהג זה שלא לגלח גם את הזקן. טוב וראוי מאוד להחזיק במנהג זה שלא לגלח גם את הזקן. It's a good thing to keep that minhag. מיהו? מי שהדבר קשה לו ביותר, if one finds it very hard, או שבמקום העבודה מאיימים לפטרו אם לא יתגלח, or at work they threaten to fire him if he walks around not shaven, יכול להסתמך על הרדב"ז לגבי תגלחת הזקן, therefore it is permitted. Now, there are many places that the minhag was to shave throughout the Omer. The minhag was only the haircut and not the shaving. And this is how it is written in Sefer Minhagei Eretz Mitzrayim, that in Egypt that's what they did, and so did they do in many Sephardic countries, that shaving was permitted. The whole discussion over here, the whole halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, is about taking haircuts. And Rav Yitzchak Yosef himself points it out. It's also brought down in the Khatam Sofer. He brings this down in Orach Chaim, in the Shut, Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Nun Chet, a chiluk between the two. And even those that made the comparison between the two, between taking haircuts and shaving, such as Rav Uziel in Mishpatei Uziel, and just like Rav Ovadia Adaya in Yaskilavdi, write that most places the minhag is to shave. The Shulchan Aruch didn't speak about shaving; he spoke about only about haircuts, and he writes like this. Reading the Yaskilavdi, he writes that it's אם הרוב לא מתגלחים או לא, אני כתבתי יש מקומות שלא קיבלו עליהם החומרה הזו בכלל. רוצה לומר גם מזמן מרן הקדוש, ובסוף הימים היו ביחידי סגולה שנהגו החומרה. Which means it's something that was very uncommon to have this kind of chumrah not to shave during the Omer. And this is how it's written in other places as well. Rav Ophir Malka points out that in Yeshivat Porat Yosef in Yerushalayim of the previous generation, all the Bachurim used to shave. And when Rav Shalom Cohen mourned in the Levaya of Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, he praised him that when he was a young boy, he didn't shave in the Omer, indicating that others did shave. So you have over here a bunch of leniencies. First of all, there is a question of whether you're allowed to shave on Rosh Chodesh. Some have such a minhag, and the Radbaz permits it, and that was the minhag in his places in Mitzrayim. What about if it falls on Shabbat? Are you allowed to shave on Friday for the honor of Shabbat on Rosh Chodesh? The Bach permitted Agaot, the Agaot, Knesset Agdola, brings this down in Shiurei Knesset Agdola. He brings this down on the Agaot on the Bet Yosef. And it seems like from the Bet Yosef himself that wrote that only Rosh Chodesh is not allowed, but if it's Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, you could permit. And on top of that, definitely one can say that the minhag was never about shaving, just about taking haircut, as written in many Sfarim, as the Yalkut himself brings down also, and therefore also the minhag was not about shaving, just haircut. So therefore, the psak would be, according to Rav Ophir Malka, everybody may shave on this Friday, that falls before Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. According to Rav Yitzchak Yosef, the way he writes, is that it depends if it's very hard for you. Now, Rav Yaskilavdi also writes that if one needs it for business, Rav Yitzchak Yosef goes further to say that only if you'll be fired from work. But other poskim don't write like this, like Rav Yaskilavdi. He says that if you walk around and it looks ridiculous, it looks funny, you're at work and people don't appreciate it that way, you might lose business, you might lose customers, or whatever it is, then that would be another reason to permit. Each one should ask his rabbi what to do in this very case. Thank you.